Yeah, but I wanted to just, touch base with you today and like also introduce my followers to you and have your followers really get to know maybe a different side of you that they haven't seen before or connect with you in like an even deeper way.
But wait, let's introduce you.
Oh, okay.
You. Nitika is my bestie from a retreat I went on recently. It's somatic therapy retreat, and we bonded uh immediately. And over the course of 5 days,
Yeah.
we know like practically everything about each other.
Yes, it's true. It's true. And it's funny that you said like immediately because I was kind of intimidated by you when I first met you. I don't
Just
think I
my
told you
bitch
this.
face. Sorry.
Yeah, well, no, but you know what though? Yes, okay, you have resting bitch face, but
Oops.
you
See?
are you are so sweet and I like to say like mushy on the inside and just like
Very much.
so kind. And so I think it was like the perfect environment for us to meet because whatever was going on the outside, it was like very clear who you were on the inside, like very quickly. So I think it was perfect. And now you can't get rid of me because we hang out all the time.
Thank God.
Yeah, I know. I feel really lucky. I feel really lucky that we get to be in this world together, figuring out how do we manifest the things that we want? How do we create what we want in our life? How do we attract the love that we want in our life or keep the love that we have in our life? So it's pretty amazing. And I keep wanting to just jump right in because I have so many questions to ask you.
Great, let's. And also, everyone should know that I'm going to be talking with Nitika on her Substack and interviewing her soon. So tune into
Okay,
that in a
I
bit.
can't wait for that.
Ask me questions.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things I really, that has really struck me about your work is you're so bold with the way that you share information. And I think, first of all, well, I want to hear actually, before I give my take on what that's about, I want to hear where did you cultivate that? Where did that come from? How did you become a person that speaks as boldly as you do about this particular topic?
Well, I mean, it could be my Jewish, but growing up in a loud Jewish family, where it was just kind of no nonsense, even though everything was nonsense in my
Yeah.
Um, but also just I think going to therapy at such a young age, and learning early on that all of the messages basically that I was getting, all of the binaries of you should do this, you shouldn't do this, or you are this, or you are that, are all kind of bullshit. That a lot of the things that we're being told or who we're told to be is kind of bullshit. Um, and so I initially felt really awful because I believed all of it is truth. And I would bring things into my therapist, and he'd be like, "No, you don't have to do that." And I was
Mm,
like, "Oh, okay." I mean, and it was just thing after thing that I realized I could define whatever the fuck I wanted to. I could be whoever I wanted to be. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And even if things, even if people told me otherwise, or um, culture, the world, my family said one thing, it doesn't matter. I don't know really if I'm making sense, but
you are. You are.
kind of just developed this like I don't give a fuck
Yeah.
um mentality
Yeah.
because there's just so much bullshit around me growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Um and then when I first got on Instagram, I never had an Instagram. I like actually saw how much bullshit was out there and how much just black and white like advice.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so I was like, no, this is ridiculous. And so I don't know.
Yeah. You started speaking from that place, it sounds like, that you learned in therapy and throughout your own healing journey that really is like embodied in this way of like, it doesn't have to be this binary like you're talking about, which I think is so helpful. And something that has been coming up for me as I've been watching your work and absorbing your work online, especially. But Todd does have a book too, y'all, which I also have. So make sure you pick that up and check it out. Um, but something that I've been thinking about is, you know, if you're sitting there, someone is sitting there watching us, on this live or on Instagram or wherever, and they're reading the things that you're saying about changing your life and the things that you deserve and all these things that you share with people, what is like the first step that you would say to them? Like, let's say someone reads something and they're like, well, I don't know how to do that, or I don't know how to attract that person. I don't know how to have that conversation. I know you do a lot of posts about the conversations we can have with our partners. What would be that first step that you'd say, okay, honey, just start here? What would be that?
Honey,
Honey.
honey. Well, I mean, a lot of the responses are about anxiety, right? I don't know how
Mhm.
to do this. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And so the first thing is really understanding what creates the I don't know.
Okay.
What's the anxiety? What's the barrier? Because people are asking questions about things that they know how to do, but all of the messaging and the way they've internalized the process of getting to wherever they want to get or attracting whatever they want to attract, whatever, is so idealistic. But the reality is, there's no way to know anything. You just simply have to move forward. I know that might be overly simplistic, but um, w- that's just how we become who we are. We
Mhm.
have to take risks. And the problem is that many of us come from families, lots of trauma, where risk and wanting more or exploring more or imagining more or fantasizing about more was not possible, which is a hallmark of trauma, the inability to want more, fear, things that paralyze us and shut us down from taking those steps. So it's not even that we don't know how, it's that we feel so afraid to take steps to move forward towards the how, because the how happens after we've done it. And then we're like, oh, now I know how to do it. Um, so a lot of what I do, at least in my sessions with my client, is we're talking about fear. We're talking about what it means to be scared, whether that's conscious or unconscious. There's just so much fear that people experience in their lives that stops them from taking steps to move forward.
Mhm.
Nikita.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Like, there is a world in which it is simple, but it's so complicated for people to do that. So I think it is actually really important to break it down to like, what you're saying is you just have to take the first step, is essentially what you're saying. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, a perfect example is like I'll
Yeah.
meet with a client and they'll say, "Well, I don't know how to have this conversation with my partner," or like
Mhm.
I do my Q&As on the weekend and then I'll get our responses, but I don't know how to start it or how do I talk to my partner about XYZ.
Mhm.
And the reality is that we talk to people about things all day. We order coffee, we have conversations all day. We know how to speak. It's not that we don't know how to say the words or we don't know how to start the conversation. It's that there's so much anxiety and fear that stops us from taking the steps to have the conversation, to ask the deeper questions, to even think of what those deeper questions could be. And all of that fear is conditioning. Is conditioning from culture based on identity, gender, race, ethnicity, background, all of those things, and also attachment. And that's what creates all of the fear that holds us back. And I think that just life is an ongoing process of understanding all of that earlier conditioning, all of that fear, all of the things that we inherited from our family, intergenerationally from our grandparents and our ancestors, and then deciding who we want to be, and then really learning how we take those steps while feeling absolutely terrified.
I love that so much, Todd, because even just like what you said about the fact that we all know how to talk, but I've never really heard someone say that before where you're like, well, we are ordering coffee or we're doing all these things. And it's actually not that different between that and the conversation you want to have with your partner about something. But it's true, the weight that we put on it is so much more significant. And of course, it technically is more important, maybe, than ordering coffee. But the skill, maybe for some people, not for a lot of New
Yeah,
Yorkers, but for some people,
my
for some people,
puppy.
yeah. But the skill is the same, and I just personally like had such a aha moment around you saying that because I think that's really helpful to then understand what is it that's blocking you, from actually being able to carry out that action. And you mentioned attachment, which actually I wanted to ask you about because I feel like I started getting into the conversations just like watching a lot of gurus online, like self love people, relationship experts, all of that because of attachment theory. And I feel like you have a very fresh take on attachment theory, or you come about it in a bit of a different way than I've seen other people talk about it.
Yeah.
So, can you share a little bit about what attachment theory is for someone who might not know, and also share your take on it?
Yo, it's interesting because like attachment theory is blown up, which thank God. Great. It's a really important theory. But then the moment I started criticizing how it was being brought up, people like actually came for me. I got really mean messages
Oh, no.
um about how important it is and how it's changed their life. And I'm, to be clear, attachment theory is really crucial in understanding our relationships. Not necessarily the theory, but understanding how our current adult relationships parallel our earlier attachment relationships and how we often then reenact those attachment relationships emotionally, relationally, in a dynamic that then starts to feel similar to our earlier relationships with our parents. It's a model, it's a blueprint. It's basically the language of intimacy that we learn. Um, it's also how we learn about who we are. So
Mhm.
much of attachment focuses on the relationships that we have in the dynamic. It's either insecure, secure, or avoidant, or whatever, about the other person. But attachment's also so deeply tied to who we are. Our parents define our reality, and the way that they treat us internalizes who we internalize that as
Mhm.
basically our identity. I am as I am treated. And so in that attachment relationship, we form an identity. And the identity is about who we have to be to get love, who we have to be to avoid conflict and to stay safe. So do we have to be someone that stays small? Do we have to be someone that gets really loud in order to get our ways? Do we have to be somebody that just runs the fuck away? All of this forms who we are going to be. So it's all blueprint for our own identity, for who we are, and how we love. And some even say how we fuck. So it's really important to understand the dynamics during infancy, early childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, etc. Um, but my issue with it was that people were diagnosing themselves as insecure, as anxious, others as avoidant, as this, in this kind of black or white, I am this, this is my identity. And the reality is that attachment is more, is well, obviously much more complicated. Um, but it's much more malleable and it's much more dependent on the dynamic as adults. That you can be with a partner who is kind of avoidant, and that can make you anxious. It doesn't mean that you are anxiously attached. It means you might have a relational dynamic that might not be so helpful for you, your
Mhm.
body, and your nervous system. So I was just taking issue with how attachment has become a diagnosis, basically,
Mhm.
when it's a much, much more complicated story. But it's definite, like people have used it as like the meal when it's an ingredient in how we understand our relationships and ourselves. Um, but I would just really discourage people from identifying as like, I'm anxiously attached. I'm this, I'm that, because
Yeah.
it's complicated.
It's so complicated, and I really resonate with that because I was definitely one of those people who felt like I found attachment theory, and then I was like, "Oh, this is what's wrong with me, and if I just figure out how to balance this one thing, then it'll all be figured out," and that's not at all how it
I
worked for
wish.
me. Yeah, exactly. It's not that easy, and
Like,
exactly what you're
how to
saying.
move from insecure to secure. It's like, what?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm, like, thinking of 100 things as you say that. And also, I totally agree, and this could even be with friendships too, because I know you talk about friendships and stuff too in your conversations, that, like, sometimes I've noticed that that has happened with friends. Like, I've had older friend or past friends that I'm not the best version of myself, and I just feel like I'm edgy or like I'm more needy or whatever it might be. Sorry, my windows are open, so it's a little loud. And then I'll have friends that totally meet me where I am, and they don't like, they're not second guessing me or they're not being weird or cagey or whatever it might be. And I'm a completely different version of myself. So I really appreciate that and the nuance that you bring to that. I think it's so so important. So if somebody was, I mean, I know this is a very, it's hard to like give specifics because I know we're not talking about like a very specific person necessarily, but I want to give people a little bit of, meat to hold on to. Like, let's say there is, I don't mean that sexually, by the way, just because I know your audience, but I just,
Why not? Let's give them
but
some meat.
in this particular moment, okay, I don't mean to sexually, but I want to just give people a takeaway, beyond what we've already talked about, because we've talked about a lot of really important things already. But I think if somebody is facing this kind of dynamic where and I hear this a lot, even just with friends, where they feel like they are not being the best version of themselves. They feel like they are in this relationship situation, situationship, friendship, whatever, and they're constantly questioning it. They're constantly questioning themselves. They're losing trust and faith in themselves. What does someone do aside from, of course, go to therapy, go see somebody who can help you? Like, where should someone start to parse out that issue? Like, where should people start with their challenges when they stop trusting themselves when it comes to relationship?
Start trusting yourself. I mean, I don't know. When it come to, I mean, I knew this for a while, but it's really setting in is that if we're feeling something, we're feeling something.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if it's totally insane, we're feeling it. And most of the times, it's rare that I'm talking to somebody that is just eliciting horrible reactions from others. Of course, there are many relationships, if not all relationships, that are formed upon a dynamic where each person is eliciting a reaction. But the reality that each person has is real. So the first thing is to start trusting yourself, not necessarily where your spiraling mind is going, but to
Mhm.
trust your body is telling you to pay attention to something. Because most people are like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. It's too much. I shouldn't, or I should
Mhm.
just deal with this, or whatever. Or they go the other way and they blame the other person. The focus has to start first with our body and noticing that our body's responding to something. It doesn't mean a catastrophe could, but and we have to trust that that's a feeling it's responding to. And then the next thing I would say is to trace that feeling. How has that feeling shown up in your life? With whom? Why? What's the story behind the feeling?
Mhm.
Is it insecurity? Is it fear? And where does that insecurity and fear come from?
Mhm.
Um, that's the first step.
Yeah, no, I
But
think that's really powerful because I feel like, first of all, you're showing people that they can have some real agency around what they're experiencing, that they don't have to just be a victim to, like, "Oh, I'm feeling this thing." And then having them sort of follow that thread and say, like, "Okay, what's the story behind it?" Then gives them something to work with, whether it's with a practitioner or journaling on their own, I'm sure. I think that's really important. I think that's really important. And have you seen with your clients, I know you can't talk to us about specific clients, but have you seen with your clients that people are really able to overcome some of those limiting beliefs around relationship and transform this area of their life with proper work on it? Because I feel like the reason why I'm asking is because I feel like people feel so hopeless around love and relationships sometimes. And they feel like, it's like, "Ugh, I've always been this way, or I've just never had anyone," or whatever it might be. I know I felt like that for a long time. So have you witnessed some real change and transformation for people?
yeah, I mean, life is transformational at every age and with all issues. But it depends on how ready people are to to be honest. I mean, it has to do with honesty. How honest can you be with yourself? Because the statements like "I'll never find" or "It's hopeless" isn't
Mhm.
honesty. It's avoidance. It's clinging to some idea of the future, some idea of the past. We avoid ourselves when we tell ourselves things like, "It's hopeless. It's never going to work. I'm worthless." That's not honesty. We have to be ready to be honest with ourselves. And so if we can start there, um, then yeah, I mean, this is why I do what I do, is because people
Mhm.
do change. But the thing to keep in mind is that change isn't necessarily this like aha moment. It's not a catharsis. Happens over a period of time where you make exaggerated steps. And it has to be exaggerated, where you push yourself to feel uncomfortable, where you do things differently. And over time, then things change. So many people want it to happen lickety split, and it doesn't. I don't think I've ever said lickety split.
No, I was actually surprised.
Where did that come from?
I think you channeled it from me. I don't think I've ever said it, but I feel like I give a lickety split vibe.
Uh,
So I just,
um, change takes time. And also part of change is not making change. And part of change is falling the fuck over and really hurting yourself and crying. Change is not easy, but it happens. And there's no way it can't happen unless you're being dishonest with yourself and avoiding your
Mhm.
feelings. Then you'll just recreate. Maybe there'll be minor changes, but
Yeah. But the depth of change will be much more shallow, it sounds like. Wow.
yes, it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the whole thing of if you do the work, it works. It doesn't work in 2 weeks. It doesn't work in a month. It works so long as you do the work throughout the course of your life. You
Yeah.
change. Things change.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. And I always appreciate, hearing people say that like it takes time. Because I think, gone are the days of people just promising these outlandish things are going to happen overnight. And I think you really do show people it takes, it's like moment to moment. And so I know we've been chatting for a little while now, but I wanted to make sure I asked you one specific question, just a little bit more of a personal question, because I feel like people want to get to know you and learn a little bit about how you run your day
Mhm.
and your life. And so when you talk about things take time and it takes like real effort and it's moment to moment, I kind of want to hear like you walk us through a little bit of your day. Like, what do you do in your life to align with being consistent with changing your life and wanting to show up for yourself in these ways
Are
that
you
you
trying to hold me accountable?
No,
It's
I
something that we talk about when we meet every week.
actually wasn't, but sure. I
No,
just want to know.
it's really ebbed and flowed, unfortunately. There are some weeks and days where I'm just like fucking on it, where I wake up, I do my journaling, I meditate later, I meditate at night, I make sure to eat, and I talk to the universe now, and I do all my things. And then there are some days where I roll out of bed and I have a Celsius, yuck, and I turn the news on lately because it's fucking insane. And then I just kind of start writing. But every day, regardless if I'm on top of it or not, I'm always doing something that's in my body. I'm always doing something where I'm expressing, have some sort of creative expression. And what I do, it happens to be about life and relationships and sex. So it's kind of both like journaling, but also expressing myself. Every day I make sure to eat, even if it's not enough, I do eat. I make sure I go to the gym, I move my body, I play with my dog. Um, I've had so much therapy lately on all different kinds. Like every day I'm doing some kind of therapy. So even if I'm not practically in an outpatient program, even if I'm not meditating, I'm having some kind of either spiritual or psychological experience that's a little bit deeper. If anything, I should probably chill the fuck out on some of that stuff. Um, yeah, lots of things.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
my issue is less of doing the work and more of living. Like I'm kind of caught in this place where I'm doing, and working, working, working. And I think it's a way I wish I could remember what I read this line. It's a way of avoiding what I actually need to be working on, which is
Hmm.
living my life in a place of lightness and fun and pleasure. So that's what I'm really trying to be aware of lately.
Okay. Well, I can hold you accountable for that.
Great.
I can definitely hold you accountable for that. No, I really appreciate that because I think it's important. I mean, as your friend, I know that you do so many of these things, and I know that you're really on it with like showing up for yourself in the best ways that you know how to.
Mhm.
And I think it's important for people to hear that, right? You're a therapist, you've been to therapy for many years, so have I. And you're still having to show up in every moment. It's not just, we're done. And it's the same for me. It's not a flaw, I don't think, that we have to show up that way. It's like a
Yeah,
commitment to ourselves, right? So, yeah, I think that's really important for people to hear and to see that even someone who has done as much work as you have and who teaches people about the work that you're doing and changes lives, like you're still doing the work on yourself every day. I think it's good for people to know.
so much work.
It's so much work. Well, Toddy, Is there anything that you want to say that we didn't get a chance to touch on, or is there anything that you wanna leave people with?
No, we've said it all.
I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah, we did it. We've said everything.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with me and asking me these wonderful
Oh
questions.
my god, it's my honor and pleasure and privilege. I'm so happy that we got to do this.
Same. It was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, you
You
too,
too.
sweetheart. All right, everybody. Tune in next time. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
And